In 1946, the man who built the American rocket program, the scientist whose work literally created NASA, was in the Mojave Desert performing an occult ritual. He was trying to summon a goddess, and he wrote down her name. In 2012, in North Carolina, a man the CIA, NASA, and the National Reconnaissance Office had been quietly investigating for 5 years, woke up at 3 in the morning, walked outside, and watched a translucent cow made of living stars run through his body and dissolve into a glowing woman hovering in the air above his property. She told him her name too. They were the same name, and that name is carved into temple walls in Egypt that are 3,000 years old. Here's what makes this more than a coincidence theory. The children who encountered her at Fatima in 1917, before anyone had a word for UAP, before Roswell, before any of this entered the cultural conversation. 2 of them were dead before the age of 10. The Greek philosophers had a precise technical vocabulary for what she is. The Book of Enoch explains where she came from, and the US government has spent decades trying to understand what she wants. This video is going to walk you through every piece of that thread. By the end, you won't have an answer, but you'll have something more uncomfortable than an answer. You'll have a pattern, and once you see it, it doesn't go away. Let's start with what we know. On January 8, 2007, Chris Bledsoe Sr. wasn't doing well. Crohn's disease had been gutting him for years. His construction business was collapsing. He took his teenage son, Chris Bledsoe Jr., and 3 employees to the Cape Fear River, a fishing trip, a way to clear his head. He walked into the woods alone and prayed, genuinely, desperately prayed. Near the top of a hill, 2 large tangerine orange spheres appeared above the tree line. He estimates they were hovering about 200 feet up. He did what most of us would do. He ran. A 3rd orb shot down in front of him. Not beside him, not above him, directly in front of him, as if it had read his intention to flee and cut him off. Then, 4 hours of missing time. His son Chris Bledsoe Jr., waiting by the river, had his own encounter. 2 small glowing humanoid creatures with red eyes approached him and paralyzed him where he stood. When Bledsoe returned to the group, they got in the truck and drove. In the middle of the road in front of them sat a massive, glowing, egg-shaped object, a tic-tac, years before that term entered the cultural vocabulary. That night, at his house, a 3-foot-tall glowing entity approached him. It had red eyes and a dark triangle on its chest. Bledsoe, terrified, surrendered to it. The entity spoke directly into his mind. "You don't understand. I'm not here to hurt you. We're here to help you." The next morning, Chris Bledsoe's Crohn's disease was gone. It hasn't returned. Now, you could write this off. You might want to. But here's where the story changes character entirely. The people who show up next aren't UFO enthusiasts. They aren't tabloid reporters. Dr. Hal Povenmire is a veteran NASA engineer and astronomer. He came to Bledsoe in 2008 specifically to debunk the story. He spent over a decade investigating instead. He interviewed neighbors who corroborated the sightings. He died a firm believer and a close family friend. Jim Semivan is a retired CIA operations officer. He wrote the foreword to Bledsoe's book. He formally acknowledged their friendship, a CIA officer vouching publicly. Colonel John B. Alexander, retired U.S. Army, Ph.D., the government's own paranormal investigator, wrote the introduction and personally investigated phenomena on Bledsoe's property. And then there's Tim Taylor, NASA engineer, National Reconnaissance Office. He manages rocket launches. He mentored the Bledsoe family, introduced Chris to intelligence circles, and connected him to advanced medical research. Government agencies, CIA, DIA, DOD, NSA, NRO, were specifically interested in 2 things: First, Bledsoe can apparently summon the orbs. Through prayer, through focused intention, they appear. Officials came to his farm, set up cameras, and filmed them. Second, those same orbs have been documented interfering with nuclear warheads and space assets. Whatever these things are, they've already demonstrated the ability to disable the most dangerous technology humanity has built. The biological effects interested scientists too. A man spontaneously cured of an autoimmune disease after contact with these phenomena, that's not a footnote, that's a research program. Chris Bledsoe Sr. is unambiguous about what he thinks the orbs are, not alien spacecraft, not visitors from another planet. He describes them as fractals of God, spiritual entities that are simultaneously craft and being. He's filmed them descending, flashing, and a tall, luminous humanoid figure stepping directly out of the light. He links them to the chariots of fire in the Bible. He says they respect human free will, that they hide from people who approach them with fear or aggressive skepticism, that they're at their core benevolent. And then there's the woman. Easter weekend, 2012. Chris Bledsoe Sr. wakes at 3 o'clock in the morning to a loud voice. He walks outside. A shadowy figure hands him a strange, prickly, living object. He places it in a kennel. A massive gust of wind knocks him to the ground. A translucent cow runs directly over him. A cow made of stars, with glowing points of light visible inside its body, moving through it like a living constellation. He rolls over. The cow is gone. In its place, hovering 3 feet above the ground, is a beautiful woman in a white dress, glowing. She tells him his experiences are a burden he must bear. She promises to protect his family. She promises to help him share what he knows with the world. Through research and hypnotic regression, Chris Bledsoe Sr. arrives at a name for her. One he didn't invent, one that was already there, waiting in the historical record. Hathor, the ancient Egyptian goddess depicted as a celestial cow, stars visible inside her body, lady of the sky, the divine feminine who bridges the living and the dead. He calls her the Lady, and he isn't the first. January 1946. The war is over. America is entering its most optimistic era, and in the Mojave Desert, a man who helped build the literal foundation of what will become NASA is performing an occult ritual to summon a goddess. His name is Jack Parsons. If you've never heard of him, you should have. Jack Parsons co-founded the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL. He pioneered solid rocket fuel. His work made the space program possible. Wernher von Braun reportedly called him the true father of the American space age. He even has a crater on the moon named after him. He was also a practicing occultist, a devoted follower of Aleister Crowley's Thelema, and in January of 1946, Jack Parsons began what he called the Babylon Working. The stated goal was, at first, to find an elemental mate, a woman who could serve as the earthly vessel for a divine feminine force. But the deeper purpose was larger. Jack Parsons believed the current age was dominated by violent, destructive masculine energy. He wanted to invoke Babylon, the sacred feminine of Thelemic tradition, to counterbalance it. The rituals were performed in Jack Parsons' home and outdoors in the Mojave Desert. They used Enochian magic, among the most complex and reputedly most dangerous forms of Western occultism. An Enochian air tablet written on virgin parchment, a consecrated air dagger, his own blood. The invocations ran daily, the invoking pentagram of air, the invocation of the Bornless One, the call of the seventh air, classical music, Prokofiev, Rachmaninoff, playing through the sessions. And in the midst of this, a document was dictated, a text that Jack Parsons transcribed during what he believed was direct contact with the goddess Babylon herself. He called it Liber 49. The voice that came through made demands, offer everything at her altar, endure ordeals, give blood and tears, undergo a black pilgrimage that'd leave him outcast and accursed. In exchange, she'd be with him to conquer death and hell. Among the invocations used during this working is a line that should stop you cold. Hathor am I, and to my beauty drawn, all glories of the universe bow down. Hathor. The same name, the same being, on the lips of Jack Parsons in the Mojave Desert, 40 years before Chris Bledsoe Sr. sees a translucent cow made of stars dissolve into a glowing woman on the Bledsoe property in North Carolina. Jack Parsons never separated his scientific work from his occult work. They were the same project to him. He was building the rockets that had pushed humanity towards space, and simultaneously opening what he believed was a channel to the intelligence that governs that space. To him, these weren't contradictory pursuits. They were parallel tracks toward the same destination. In her 2019 book, American Cosmic, religious studies scholar Dr. Diana Pasulka documents a hidden network of scientists, engineers, and academics she calls the Invisible College. These are researchers who study UAP phenomena in secret, protecting their academic reputations and funding, while openly believing they're in contact with non-human intelligence. Her primary case study is a man she calls Tyler D. Tim Taylor, or Tyler D., is a wealthy entrepreneur and former aerospace engineer who is a mission controller for NASA space shuttle launches. He doesn't claim to invent his technologies through conventional research and development. Instead, he receives them, complex biomedical patents, engineering schematics, arriving fully formed in his mind in the middle of the night. He calls them downloads. To facilitate these communications, Tim Taylor / Tyler D. follows strict physical protocols. No coffee, no alcohol. He believes these substances scramble the signal. He wakes in the night specifically for receptivity, and here's the detail that should make the hair on your arm stand up. He believes human DNA functions as a satellite receiver, a biological antenna capable of picking up frequencies from non-human intelligence. He's used these downloads to create real, patented, functional technologies, including a device currently used to treat bone cancer. He isn't a fringe figure. He's embedded in the aerospace and intelligence community at the highest level. Now recall that Chris Bledsoe's aerospace contact, Tim Taylor, or Tyler D., is a rocket launch engineer who mentors the Bledsoe family and bridges them into intelligence circles. Whether these are the same person is a question the record leaves open, but the pattern isn't open to interpretation. Rocketry, a non-human feminine intelligence, downloads in the night, the desert, Jack Parsons, Tim Taylor and Tyler D. The phenomenon keeps finding the people who touch space. Dr. Diana Pasulka's thesis is worth sitting with. She argues that what Catholic mystics throughout history described as divine inspiration, the creative spark that arrives fully formed, attributed to God or angels, is functionally identical to what modern aerospace scientists describe as alien information downloads. The framework changes, the experience doesn't. So what exactly is broadcasting? Before we answer that, we need to go back further. Much further. The ancient Greeks had a word for what Chris Bledsoe Sr. encounters, for what Jack Parsons was trying to reach, for the points of light that populate the atmosphere and interact selectively, intentionally with human beings. Daimons. Not demons in the modern Christian sense. Something older and more precise. The philosopher Xenocrates described daimons as intermediate spiritual entities inhabiting the atmosphere, the sublunary region between Earth and the divine heavens. He said they existed on a moral spectrum from good to bad, that they were soul-like, that they could experience pleasure and pain. The Pythagorean commentaries are more direct. The whole air is full of souls. We call them Daimons and heroes, and it's they who send dreams, signs, and illnesses to men. And not only men, but also to sheep and other domestic animals. Read that again. Points of light in the air. They send dreams and signs. They cause illness in livestock. Chris Bledsoe Sr. films 50 to 70 orbs, putting on choreographed light displays over the Bledsoe property. They respond to his thoughts. They've, in his own words, cured him of a debilitating disease. The Greek philosophical tradition didn't find any of this surprising. They cataloged it systematically. Plutarch adds the darker dimension. He describes some daimons as great and strong beings in the atmosphere, malevolent and morose, beings that gravitate toward unlucky days and violent religious festivals, beings that rejoice in sacrifice and suffering. Xenocrates goes further. These entities deliberately cause agricultural failure, disease, and social discord to make humans succumb to their will. They manufacture the crisis, then they offer the solution. Now look at what Paul writes in Ephesians, the prince of the power of the air. In the original Greek, archonta tes exousias to eros, the ruler with jurisdictional authority over the immediate spiritual atmosphere surrounding humanity. This wasn't metaphor to the early church. Augustine and Jerome interpreted it literally. The air was thick with aerial powers, entities cast out of the highest heaven but not yet locked in the abyss. They occupied the mist and clouds. St. John Chrysostom described them as middlemen of malice, intercepting the soul's ascent. They broadcast into the atmosphere. They intercept what travels through it. And the Book of Enoch gives us the lineage. The Nephilim, the hybrid offspring of the Watchers and human women, were destroyed in the flood, but their spiritual essence remained. Unlike human souls, they couldn't be judged and moved to Sheol. They were barred from heaven because of their origin. They were barred from the underworld because of their nature. They were left in the atmosphere with no body to inhabit. They hunger for the physical world. They don't eat or thirst, yet they hunger. They roam. They cause trouble and ruin and deception. They'll do so, according to Enoch, until the final day, which raises a specific question. Are the orbs the wandering souls of the Nephilim, and are the fallen Watchers themselves the ones steering those souls, still searching for vessels, still trying to anchor their offspring back into the physical world? An intelligence barred from heaven, barred from rest, desperately seeking a vessel. Now read Jesus in Matthew 12:43. When an unclean spirit goes out of a man, he goes through dry places, seeking rest, and finds none. Dry places, waterless places, the wilderness. Isaiah describes ruins and desolate places as the haunts of night creatures, which the Septuagint translates directly as daimonia. The desert isn't just atmosphere for these encounters. It's a habitat. It's where they go when they've no other option. Jack Parsons performs the Babylon working in the Mojave Desert. Jesus is tempted in a desert wilderness for 40 days. The desert is both the ritual space and the natural address of these entities when they're between hosts. The entity that speaks through Liber 49 demands that Jack Parsons offer everything: blood, tears, total devotion, a black pilgrimage into total social exile. The Nephilim souls described by Enoch hunger for the physical world. They seek vessels. They find humans who pray, who perform rituals, who open channels intentionally or unintentionally. And in 1917, in a field in Fatima, 3 children opened a channel they didn't understand. Fatima, Portugal, 1917. 3 shepherd children, Lucia dos Santos, Francisca Marto, and Jacinta Marto, begin seeing a luminous woman who appears to them in a field outside their village. She's beautiful. She's dressed in white. She hovers in the air. Over the course of 6 apparitions, the entity makes her demands increasingly clear. She wants the daily recitation of the rosary, She wants acts of penance and sacrifice. She wants mortification of the flesh, suffering offered on behalf of sinners. She weeps over the hardness of humanity's heart. In July of 1917, she shows the children something. The earth opens up. A great sea of fire appears beneath it. Plunged in the flames are demons and human souls. Human souls described as transparent burning embers, blackened in bronze, rising with the flames and falling back like sparks. The demons are described as beings of terrifying and repellent shapes, like frightful and unknown animals, black and transparent, like burning coals. The sound, according to Lucia dos Santos, was shrieks and groans of pain and despair. The children trembled with fear, and then the woman in white tells them, to save souls from this place, God wants the world devoted to her immaculate heart. She showed children a vision of hell to drive compliance with a devotional program. Now let's talk about what happened to those children. Francisco Marto was 10 years old when he died. He contracted bronchopneumonia in December 1918. He was told by the apparitions themselves that he'd die young, and he refused hospital treatment, accepting his fate as a kind of offering. He spent his final weeks in bed, praying, preparing for confession. He died at home on April 4th, 1919. His sister Jacinta Marto was 9 years old when she died. Her death was worse. After contracting influenza in 1918, she developed a severe abscess in her chest and required surgery to remove 2 diseased ribs. Because of a heart condition, she could only be given local anesthesia. She endured the procedure fully conscious, in full pain. She was transferred to multiple hospitals. Separated from her family, she died alone in the night on February 20th, 1920, having predicted the exact time of her death with accuracy. 2 children, dead before the age of 10, from a contact event that by every Catholic account was a visit from the Holy Virgin Mother. When Jacinta Marto's tomb was opened in 1935, her face was found incorrupt. 15 years after death, unchanged. Whatever made contact at Fatima left marks. And yet when you map the behavior pattern, the demands, the conditional threats, the cultivation of devotion through fear, it looks nothing like a mother's love. It looks like the Greek Daimons Xenocrates described, beings that manufacture crisis and deprivation to bring humans into submission, that cause suffering and then position themselves as the solution, that are at their core in the business of extraction. The entity at Fatima repeatedly warned about war, famine, crop failure, the decay of the church, the exact categories of disaster that Xenocrates said Daimons deliberately inflict to make humans yield to them. Warn about what you cause, then accept the devotion when they pray for relief. That isn't a loving mother, that's a creditor. So here's where everything lands. Across 3,000 years of documented contact with a luminous female intelligence, the pattern isn't in the doctrine. It isn't in the cultural trappings. It isn't in whether she arrives as a goddess, as a cosmic entity from a thelemic working, as an Egyptian sky deity, or as the Holy Virgin Mother. The pattern is in the white. She's always the same color, always luminous, always dressed, visually and symbolically, in the vocabulary of purity and safety, because white is the oldest disarming signal humanity has. Before a single word is spoken, the witness has already lowered their defenses. Whatever this intelligence is, it understands human symbolic architecture well enough to use it as an entry point. The Greeks called it a daimon and built a philosophy around it. They tried to maintain favorable relationships through purification rituals, sacrifices, and divination, because they understood these beings weren't neutral. They could heal or harm, bless or curse, and they moved through the atmosphere with intention. Paul called it the prince of the power of the air and warned that it was actively broadcasting into the spirit of human civilization. Enoch described its kind as the restless dead, barred from heaven, barred from rest, perpetually seeking a vessel, perpetually hungry for the physical world they were created from and can never fully inhabit. Jack Parsons invited her in the Mojave Desert with blood. She gave him inspiration. She gave him demands. She gave him a black pilgrimage that left him outcast from his own community, and he died in an explosion at 47 years old under circumstances that have never been fully explained. The children at Fatima didn't invite her. She arrived anyway. She showed them hell. She asked them to suffer. 2 of them were dead within 3 years. And Chris Bledsoe Sr., a sick man who walked into the woods and prayed for help, has spent nearly 2 decades at the center of government interest, scientific scrutiny, and ongoing contact with something that cured his body and has never fully left him alone since. He calls her a blessing. He keeps going back. Jack Parsons kept going back. The children at Fatima kept going back. The Nephilim souls in Enoch's account don't need to chase anyone. The fallen angels that helped create them don't need to hide who they are. They just need to be found by someone who's open, desperate, or spiritually attuned enough to receive them. And once the channel is open, it stays open. So here's the question this video doesn't answer, because it can't, and maybe it's not supposed to. What does she want? She wants rockets. She wants devotion. She wants blood and penance and sacrifice, and the attention of the most gifted people humanity produces. She keeps showing up at the intersection of spiritual openness and technological ambition, as if she's a specific interest in where we go next, or when we leave this planet that acts as her prison. And she keeps appearing in white because she knows you'll let her in. The whole air is full of souls. They've been here the whole time, and they're very, very patient.